evening, everyone. Thank you again for being here. That last song that was played before we played another song is called "There's a Hole in the Heart of America." And the lyrics are, there's a hole in the heart of America that only God can fill. Right now, we are working to address the political symptoms. But we know it's a broken culture, and we ultimately find our faith, our hope, and our salvation in Jesus Christ. But here on earth, we're going to put in the work to make sure that in Georgia, 750,000 Georgians are visited at their home saying where the candidates stand on the issues. We're going to do that. To open us tonight, please join me in welcoming Dr. Benny Tate to open us in prayer. He's the senior pastor of Rock Springs Church.
Thank you so very much. When Ronald Reagan was sworn into office, he wanted the Bible to be open to a portion of Scripture. And that portion of Scripture that he placed his hand on was 2 Chronicles 7:14, that says, "If my people, which are called by my name, shall humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then I'll hear from heaven, I'll forgive their sin, I'll heal their land." Ladies and gentlemen, God does nothing but by prayer and everything with it. Let us pray. Our most kind, gracious Heavenly Father, as we bow our heads and our hearts in your presence, I thank you for this day. This is the day that you have given us, and we rejoice and we're very glad in it. I want to begin by thank you for protecting President Trump. God, I pray over that man, Isaiah 54, verse 17, that says, "No weapon formed against us shall prosper." I believe that, God. We trust you. You are truly our shield and our buckler. God, I pray tonight for the nation of Israel. What a debt that we owe to the nation of Israel. And you tell us in your word that those that bless Israel shall be blessed, and those that curse Israel shall be cursed. And no nation has stood stronger with us in the United Nations than the nation of Israel. So we lift up Israel's protection to you. What a debt of gratitude. There is no Bible without Israel. There is no apostles without Israel. There is no Mary and Joseph without Israel. There is no Savior without Israel. And there is no salvation without Israel, because salvation belongeth unto the Jews. God, I pray tonight that you would bless us, that your presence would be here. We exalt you, we praise you. We ask you to bless us and keep us. Make your face to shine upon us. Be gracious unto us. Lift your countenance upon us. May we experience your peace. And we pray this prayer tonight, respecting all faiths. But we pray this prayer tonight in the name above every name. That's the name of your Son, our Savior, and soon coming King, Jesus, the Lamb of glory. Amen.
Now I'm going to ask everyone to rise. If you will please welcome our dear friend, U.S. Army veteran, a leader in the business community, Mr. Steve Tanner. Thank you so much for your friendship to lead us in the pledge.
So please join me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance. The flags are right here. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You may be seated. We have some very special guests in the house. Some very special guests in the house. And to welcome the first of our special guests, please join me in welcoming the founder and chairman of the Faith and Freedom Coalition, Dr. Ralph Reed.
Thank you very much, and welcome to the Georgia Faith and Freedom Coalition Victory Dinner. It is my great privilege and my great honor to welcome back to a Faith and Freedom stage not only one of the finest public servants that this state has ever produced, but one of the finest public servants that any state has ever produced. He's the most pro-life governor in the history of this state. He not only signed, but he fought for the heartbeat bill, and he stood for the right to life of the unborn child. And you know, to those prophets of timidity and retreat who say that our stand for the innocent unborn is a political liability, this man has never believed that. He doesn't believe it today. And when he ran for re-election after standing for the unborn, he won by a landslide. And if he never does anything else, we will owe him a debt of gratitude for the rest of our lives, that because of his bold conservative leadership, Stacey Abrams will never be the governor of Georgia. Not now, not ever. He's the most pro-business governor in the history of this state, and that's a high bar. He's lowered taxes and regulations and put out a sign outside Georgia saying open for business. And Georgia has been named by Arid Development magazine just 3 days ago as the #1 state in America to do business, an honor that it has had for 11 years. He passed a tough and strong election integrity bill and stared down Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, woke corporations, and yes, even Major League Baseball, and stood courageously to give us free and fair elections in our state. And by the way, the All-Star game will be just a little while from here, next year. So eventually, even Major League Baseball caved. He is a great friend of faith and freedom. He believes in the values that beat in the hearts and give meaning to the souls of the citizens of our state. Please welcome our friend, the best governor in America, Brian Kemp.
Wow, thank y'all very much. Thank you, Ralph. Thank y'all so much. It is an honor to be with you all this evening. Thankfully, I have, as usual, the greatest First Lady in the country, Marty Kemp, with me. As y'all know, she's done more at the state level than anyone in the country to end human trafficking, raise the awareness of that evil crime, and help support the victims. And I know that many of you are in that fight with her, so thank you for that. I just want to start by thanking you all for all the thoughts and prayers that you have bestowed upon Marty and I and our administration over the years, and just let you know how much that means to our entire family. I'll be brief tonight because I know that you have a lot of great folks that you're going to hear from. In fact, my remarks will probably be shorter than Ralph's introduction. But I do appreciate the kind words and the work that we have done together. I believe it is important for all of us to understand what's at stake this November. As you know, Georgia hasn't just protected faith and freedom over the last 5.5 years. We have advanced the conservative agenda time and time again. We have stood up for what was right and fought back against those who would take a stand or would take our state and our nation in the wrong direction. As Ralph mentioned, in Georgia, we expanded protection for the lives of the unborn. We strengthened our Second Amendment rights. We protected the freedoms of our citizens during a once-in-a-life pandemic, championed, as was mentioned, the strongest election integrity act in the country, and as Ralph mentioned again, just named the top state for business for the 11th year in a row. I think it's important to remember that these successes were accomplished in the face of a well-funded opposition from the left, the media, and their activist allies. But we did not waver. We did not back down. We put hard-working Georgians and their liberties as Americans first. The fact is, we cannot continue to advance our agenda and stand up for the people of Georgia without Republican majorities in the State House and the State Senate. These races don't receive the same media coverage or fanfare, but they are critical, y'all, to our future as a state. That's why our leadership committee is dedicated to spending $2 million to help our candidates win in swing districts and ensure we pass conservative pro-growth policies at the state capitol for the next 2 years. I also want to thank Ralph and Mac Parnell for the great work Faith and Freedom is doing alongside us in these districts, as well as statewide, to help turn out the vote and deliver victories up and down the ballot. This fight, as you know, does not stop at the state level. We have to expand our majority in Congress, take back control of the U.S. Senate, and send Donald Trump back to the White House. And the reason that we have to do that is because we know what the other side will do if they take control of the federal government. We know what they will do because it is exactly what Kamala Harris promised to do the last time she ran for president. Crossing our border illegally will be decriminalized. Fracking will be banned, and American energy production will be hamstrung. The Green New Deal will transform the American economy and way of life, decimating small businesses, making the cost of living crisis worse, and drastically expanding the size and scope of the federal government. Her judicial nominees will be to the left of the left. Her foreign policy will be about appeasing her radical base, leaving Israel without a strong, committed ally, and the rest of the world wondering if America's word is worth anything anymore. She will increase spending, raise taxes, and stack the federal bureaucracy with partisan activists committed to using the heavy hand of government to roll back our liberties and freedoms, and we have seen this before, as well as to undermine our way of life. These are just some of the issues that she has flip-flopped on in just the last 3 months. Of course, now the Vice President is trying to erase her entire career in the Senate and as a candidate for president. She's trying to convince everyone that she's a moderate, who owns a gun, who loves fracking, and all of a sudden doesn't want to eliminate private health insurance anymore. Frankly, y'all, Kamala Harris of 2020 wouldn't even recognize the Kamala Harris of today. The truth is, the Vice President is just another politician saying whatever they have to win an election. That is what's at stake this November. Not just one policy, not just one law. Kamala Harris wants to take our country farther away from its founding principles. More government, higher taxes, runaway spending, a weak America abroad, and American families less safe at home. So we cannot take anything for granted. We cannot take our foot off the gas. We have to work hard for the next 49 days. The future of our country depends on it. And I believe that by working together and being united, I know we can finish the drill and save America. Thank you all for having me. Thank you for being in the fight with us. Keep chopping and let's win this dang thing. God bless you.
Oh, thank you for the musical interlude. Well, I don't know that anybody can lay out the stakes in this election any better than our governor just did. We gather here tonight, and we're 50 days from not only one of the most consequential elections of our lifetimes, but frankly, one of the most consequential in the history of our country. Kamala Harris is the most radical, out of the mainstream candidate for president in the history of this country. And I know she wants to hide her views and replicate the basement strategy of Joe Biden in 2020, but we are not going to let her get away with it. We are not going to let that happen again. We're also one day away from the second attempted assassination of a former President of the United States and the presidential nominee of one of our two parties in as many months. And you know, it's pretty incredible that they claim he's a would-be dictator that would seek to foment political violence when they have for years uttered lies and smears and slurs against his reputation, alleging that he poses an existential threat to the survival of our democracy and our Constitution, creating a toxic political environment in which anyone with a screw loose could not be blamed for concluding that they were doing a public service by trying to end his life. And I don't know about you, but after what happened in Butler, Pennsylvania, and after what happened yesterday, I think it is high time for the Harris campaign, for the Democrats, and for the media to stop this toxic language and quit smearing this man right now and go back to doing your job. Now, what we're going to be doing, what we're already doing at Faith and Freedom, is the most ambitious and far-reaching voter education and get out the vote program outside the Republican Party in the post-World War II political history of our nation. Through this past weekend, our volunteers and staff have knocked on 2,176,212 doors in the battleground states, including, by the way, 282,000 doors just in the state of Georgia. Let's give Mac Parnell and the Georgia Faith and Freedom Coalition a round of applause for that extraordinary job. And by the time the dust settles, we will have knocked on 10 million doors in the battleground states, made 10 million get-out-the-vote calls, sent out 25 million get-out-the-vote texts, and distributed 30 million voter guides in 113,000 churches. And here in Georgia, by the way, that'll be over 5,000 churches. It'll be 750,000 door knocks. And we're focused on 558,073 low-propensity voters of faith, either modeled evangelical Christians or frequently mass-attending pro-life Catholics. And if you can believe it, and this is a scary statistic, 166,000 of those voters, pro-life, pro-family, frequently church-attending, believe in the Bible, voted for Donald Trump in 2016 and then didn't even bother to show up to vote in 2020. So we're going to knock on their doors, we're going to call them, we're going to text them, we're going to email them. If they haven't voted, we're going to come back and knock on their door again, and we're going to say, you know we were just here, but you haven't voted yet, you haven't requested an absentee ballot, and I apologize, but I got to keep coming back until you vote. I got to keep coming back. Before you leave here, we have these door hangers in the back, along with voter guides for your church. Don't leave here without taking these. Walk your neighborhood. Get these voter guides in your church. Can we agree that it's time for Christians to be the head and not the tail of our political system and turn out the biggest vote of people of faith in the history of this state. And when we do it, the man that I'm about to call up on stage will be the Vice President of the United States. And what an upgrade that will be. Now, most of us probably got to know JD Vance through his best-selling memoir, Hillbilly Elegy, an evocative and moving story about a brilliant young man who grew up in a family torn apart by divorce, family breakup, and addiction. A very capable young man who grew up in a community with shuttered factories that had lost jobs, where too many were without economic opportunity or hope. And JD Vance became a voice for those voiceless. He became an eloquent defender of the heartland of our country who had had their communities hollowed out by industrial giants that had fled our nation and gone overseas in search of cheaper labor. And he became an advocate for those who had been ignored and left behind. And you know, in many ways, JD Vance's story is a uniquely and characteristically American story, because it's a story of how persistence and faith in God and character and hard work can overcome very tough beginnings. And even more profoundly, it's a story of redemption, a story how God can heal the broken and how he can take those who have suffered and use them as his instruments for his glory and for our good and for the common good. And that's exactly what he's done with JD Vance. He went on to Ohio State University, to Yale University. He served his country in the U.S. Marines. He rose to the U.S. Senate, and now he aspires to the second highest office in the land. We are fortunate, we are grateful, not just as conservatives, but as Americans and as patriots, that God has raised this man up for such a time as this. And make no mistake about it, they're after him because he stands for us. And we now stand for him, and will now knock on those 10 million doors. And on January 20th, this man is going to put his hand on a family Bible, and he's going to take the oath of office. Please welcome the next Vice President of the United States, Senator JD Vance of Ohio.
Thank you all. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. Thank you for all that you're doing. And thank you for being people of faith who care about this country and love this country enough to fight for it. I'm fighting right there with you, and I'm honored to be here. So thrilled that you had me tonight. I want to, before I kick off my remarks, I want to offer a couple of notes of appreciation to so many of the dear friends that I have here. I want to start, of course, with Ralph Reed. Ralph, thank you not just for the kind introduction, but for your years of friendship. I first met Ralph, actually, when I was running in my primary race in the state, for the Republican Senate race in the state of Ohio. I think we had a connection from the very beginning, I think because we're both people of faith who care a lot about ensuring that our country lives according to the common good. And so Ralph and I have been close for a long time, and of course, thrilled to be here this evening. I also want to recognize some other VIPs who are here this evening. We have, of course, your incredible, patriotic, and very effective Governor Brian Kemp with his lovely wife Marty. Brian and Marty, thank you both. The lights are really bright, so I can't see anybody that I'm introducing, so please just stand up or wave. I won't be able to see you, but the people behind us will. I want to thank Georgia Attorney General Chris Carr. Where's Chris? And my dear colleague and one of my favorite people in politics, the great senator from Alabama, Katie Britt. Katie, thank you. You have some of the very best congressmen and public servants in the state of Georgia. I know that Mike Collins is here. We're thrilled to have Mike. Thank you so much, Mike. We have, I think, the best name in the United States Congress, Barry Loudermilk. Barry, where are you? I know we're so grateful to have, not just here tonight, but on the Trump team, we have the great Tulsi Gabbard, former Democratic Congresswoman, but a true superstar and a true patriot. And by the way, you know, people think about our party right now. Think about the incredible team that we have. We have Brian Kemp, Donald Trump, Nikki Haley, Tulsi Gabbard, and Bobby Kennedy Jr. What an amazing team of patriots fighting for this country. But of course, there's a lot of disagreement between those five individuals I just named, and amazingly, they're all on Trump's team for 2024 because we are the party of common sense. We can disagree amicably, but we've got to get common sense back in the White House, and that's why we're going to elect Donald J. Trump. I want to thank Georgia Commissioner of Labor Bruce Thompson. Bruce, thank you. And finally, I want to thank Bishop Kelvin Cabarrus. Thank you, Bishop. God bless you. And thank you for being here. Thank you, Bishop. Now, I want to just talk a little bit about my own faith journey, and some of you have heard a little bit about this, including probably an event hosted by Ralph Reed, but a lot of you probably don't know a whole lot about how I left the faith, but eventually came back to it. And I think it's instructive because it lets you know a little bit who I am, but it also maybe lets you know a little bit about how I think about the challenges confronting our country. Now, I was raised by a working class grandmother because my mother struggled with opioid addiction for a big chunk of my early life. And my mamaw, for those of you who haven't read the book, that's what I called my grandmother. She was a woman of profound and very thoughtful Christian faith. Even though she hadn't graduated from high school, my grandmother thought more about what the Christian faith required of her and required of me than any person that I've ever met. She read the Bible every single day, and she was a person who loved the Lord with all her heart. Now, she was also a woman of great tensions, because as much as she loved the Lord, she also loved the F word. And I will say, as the father now of a 7-year-old boy, a 4-year-old boy, and a 2-year-old girl, there are real consequences to talking like Mamaw did at home. And, you know, the person who I'm, of course, most thrilled to have here, with all due respect to the dignitaries and leaders here today, is, of course, my lovely wife, Usha. Usha, it's... And I think a lot of you have gotten to know Usha and fallen in love with Usha just as I have, because she's this incredible combination of beauty and grace and dignity and intelligence. And hopefully my wife would say some nice things about me, but the one thing that she wouldn't say is that I always talk diplomatically at home. And I sometimes wish, honey, the one thing that maybe you wish you could take back is that maybe Mamaw hadn't talked a certain way, because now I talk that way too. And I'd ask all of you to forgive me if you ever see me make a misstep on the campaign trail with my language, but I came by it honestly, because Mamaw really could make a sailor blush with the way that she spoke. And I will tell you this story that, you know, we have, like I said, 3 little kids, and when our 4-year-old was 3 years old, you know, we would often go back and forth, go back and forth between Ohio and D.C., and we like to take our kids to D.C. with us, and of course like to take our kids back home. And, you know, my son, we were on a Delta flight, and I remember wondering if anybody on the flight knew who I was, and hopefully they didn't, because, you know, I had a baseball cap on and just didn't look especially great. Probably hadn't showered that morning, was just, you know, trying to wrangle a 3-year-old on the airplane, and then my son drops a Biscoff cookie between the 2 seats, and he says, "Well, oh," and I won't repeat it here because I don't want to offend anybody, but then about 12 heads jerked around and looked at me simultaneously, and everybody knew at that moment that Senator Vance was a terrible father. But with all kidding aside, while Mamaw did have some colorful language, she really tried to instill the tenets of the Christian faith in me. Now, we didn't go to church a whole lot. We were what I think a lot of sociologists would call unchurched, but we talked about it a lot. We watched Billy Graham a lot, and we thought a lot about what our Christian faith required of us. Now, unfortunately, like a lot of young people who were raised in the faith, I myself lost my faith when I went to college and started to think that I knew everything. And I know there are a lot of 22-year-olds out there. I enlisted in the Marine Corps out of high school, and so I was 23 when I started my classes at Ohio State University. And like a lot of kids in their early 20s, I assumed that I knew things that Mamaw didn't know. I assumed that her faith came from a place of being backward and not understanding the world, instead of from understanding it a lot better than I did as a 23-year-old young man. And so as I got older, and I thought a little bit about how to control my temper, for example, and I fell in love with this beautiful young girl who became, of course, my wife, I started to think, what was it that I needed to be as a husband? And what was it that I wanted to be as a father? And the more that I thought about those questions, the more I increasingly found the answers in the Christian faith that I discarded as a young man. And that realization that the basic truths about being a good man, about being a good husband, about being a dedicated father, those truths found their best expression in the Christian faith of my grandmother, and that led me back to Jesus Christ. And that, thank you. And that, I think, leads me a little bit into this campaign and this race and why we're fighting for what we're fighting for. Because in this room, while we're disparaged by the media and disparaged by the Democrats as people who want to force our faith on other people, I think I speak for every single person in this room saying we don't want to force our faith on anybody. What we want is to recognize and to have motivate us the faith that is, I think, the source of all great truth in human history, and especially in this country. That we want our public policy to be motivated by the wisdom of loving thy neighbor. That we want our public policy to be motivated by an understanding that family is the most important thing in this country. It is the most important institution in our country, and if the family falls, everything else will suffer, and suffer dramatically so. We are motivated, in other words, by living our faith and ensuring that our public policy promotes the common good. And I think that at this moment in time, in 2024, with all the violence and all the negative political rhetoric, we need to remember above and beyond that we must love our neighbors, that we must treat other people as we hope to be treated, and that we must love our God and let it motivate us in how we enact public policy and how we live our faith and how we govern our nation. And that will make America a more prosperous and a healthier and a more sane and, most importantly, a better nation. A nation with virtue and with truth at its core than anything else. Now, I think there are a lot of ways in which the wisdom of the Christian faith can influence us and make us much better public servants in 2024. And I think there are so many ways in which our current leadership is failing. And failing not just when it comes to matters of economics, not just when it comes to matters of immigration, but when it comes to very basic matters of how do we promote a country where good people can get ahead, where people can live decent and virtuous lives, where people can send their children to schools where they get an education instead of an indoctrination, and where all of us, whatever our faiths, can raise our children in our values rather than having those values destroyed by public authorities. That, I think, thank you. That, I think, is what this election is ultimately about. And I want to talk for a little bit about the issues that affect all of us, whatever our faith are, or if we don't have any faith at all. And then I want to talk a little bit about those issues that affect, in particular, people of faith. Because there are real battles to be had over the next 45 days. There are real debates to be had over the next 45 days. And I believe, as certain as I stand here today, that Donald J. Trump will be the next president of the United States. But let's talk about why it's so important to make that happen. And clearly you all agree with me. But let's just say that unless we get better public leadership, let's just start with the issues that affect all of us, whether we're Christian or Jew, secular, Muslim, whatever our faith. Everybody wants a prosperous economy. Everybody wants a secure border. Everybody wants to be able to walk their children down the city streets safely without being, without being accosted by violent criminals or by fentanyl brought in by Mexican drug cartels. These are the things that unite us as Americans. And let's just be honest here, that on every single policy issue over the last 3.5 years, Kamala Harris was a failure, and on every single one of these policy issues from 2017 to 2021, Donald Trump was a raging success. In some ways, the question of this election is, do we want to be governed by common sense, or do we want to be governed by San Francisco liberal radicalism? And I think that all of us believe that we want to be governed by common sense. We want to be governed by the leadership of Donald J. Trump, and we're going to fight every single day to make that happen. Now, Kamala Harris would lead you to believe, if you actually watch her speeches or you watch her rallies, Kamala Harris would lead you to believe two things that just don't make an ounce of sense. The first is that she has been nowhere near the seat of power for the last 3.5 years. You go to a Kamala Harris rally, which I don't recommend, by the way. But if you're brave enough, or you watch one on TV and you see Kamala Harris say, on day one, we're going to tackle the food affordability crisis that affects our country. On day one, we're going to tackle the housing costs that affect our country. On day one, she says, we are going to secure that southern border. And all of us with common sense are listening and saying, Kamala Harris, day one was 1,400 days ago. What have you been doing with all of that power the American people gave you? Now, Katie Britt and I have only been in politics for all of 2 years, so maybe we just haven't been in politics long enough to not be ashamed at the sitting vice president staring at the American people and telling them that she's going to do something on day one that she hasn't done for 3.5 years. I think that takes a special level of shame. And unfortunately, Kamala Harris is maybe the most shameless politician that we have had in the United States in 40 years. So she says it. But let's actually check the record, my friends. We have to remember, this is a person who said that she wanted to defund the police. Now she doesn't. This is a person who said that she wanted to ban fracking in this country. Now, of course, she says she didn't mean it. This is a person who supported the rioters who burned down Minneapolis in the summer of 2020. She bailed them out of jail. Now she says she didn't actually want to do those things. This is a person who says that she does not believe in abortion up to the moment of birth, and yet has supported legislation that has done exactly that. Now, I joke with the president. I say, sir, this person is about to show up with a long red tie and a MAGA hat because she is running away from every single position that she has had for 3.5 years. She's running away from every position she's had for 20 years. But we can't let people forget, and when you're out there knocking on doors, let's remind everybody that this is not a person who is run as a reasonable moderate. This is not a person who is governed as a reasonable moderate. As much as Kamala Harris pretends that she agrees with Donald Trump on everything, we know the real deal, governed as a successful president, doesn't just pretend now that he's running that he believes those things. He actually did them as president. He lowered inflation. He secured the border. He made our streets safer, and that's why we have to put him back in the White House. Now, I want to tell you a particularly heartbreaking story. I was in Valdosta, Georgia, of course not too far from here, a couple hours drive, and the sheriffs there took me to the interdiction room. And the interdiction room is where all the stuff that they've gotten. They've got, bags and bags of marijuana. They've got fentanyl pills. They've got meth. They've got every drug you can possibly imagine. Of course, they've got a lot of guns there because the cartels traffic in illegal drugs, but also in illegal guns. So there's one thing that seems out of place when I'm there in Valdosta, and I say, guys, what is going on here? And that's, you got all these drugs here. That looks to me just like a box of candy, a box of nerds candy. And they say, well, sir, that's actually THC and fentanyl. And I say, wait a second. The cartels have disguised deadly fentanyl to look like child's candy so that they can make it easier to get into our country. And yet we know that one of those packets of fentanyl is going to end up in one of our neighborhood streets. One of those packets of fentanyl is going to end up in a child's playground. One of those packets of what looks like nerds candy but is actually a deadly substance is going to end up in our schools. And a kid's going to open up a packet of candy, take a piece of candy out, and lose their life because of it. Now that is a sick and deranged human being that would do anything like that, but it's a sick and deranged human being who would give that person power over the United States of America, and that's exactly what Kamala Harris has done. She has given these drug cartels free reign over our country, and now they're smuggling in deadly drugs that look like child's candy. Now, I know a lot of us in here are parents or grandparents. And yes, kids sometimes do stupid things. I did a lot of dumb things when I was a teenager. But I want our children to grow up in a country where stupid childhood mistakes don't claim their lives. I want them to be able to make a mistake and then learn from it. I want their leaders to protect our city streets so our children can learn from their mistakes rather than have it kill them. And that is maybe the most profound thing that Kamala Harris has taken away from this country. By letting not just drug traffickers, but people who are bringing in the most disgusting substances in the world concealed as child's candy, she has taken something that belongs to every American child, rich or poor, public safety. She's taken it away from them. And that is maybe reason number one why we cannot let Kamala Harris get a promotion to President of the United States. Because as much as she talks a good game, she has governed in a way that has destroyed public safety, that has raised the cost of groceries, that has raised the cost of housing, and that has allowed the drug cartels to run rampant over our country. We can't let her forget it, and when we're out there knocking on doors, we can't let the American people forget it. This election is too important. We just have to tell the truth. Tell the truth about Kamala Harris and tell the truth about Donald Trump, and we will win on November 5th, and we'll do it together. Now, those are the issues that affect everybody, whether you're a person of faith or not. Let's talk about the issues that affect people of faith in particular. Because I know that there is a lot of concern here in this room that cultural conservatives are no longer welcome in the Republican Party. And let me tell you, that is absolutely not true. You are always going to be welcome, and you will always have the seat at the table in the Republican Party of this president and of this leadership. But let me just say something about one issue in particular. Because for half a century, the pro-life movement worked with unwavering faith, perseverance, and courage to send abortion back to the states, to give the people the decision over abortion policy. Now, the Supreme Court's decision, it was not only a victory for the Constitution, it was a victory, it was a testament to the resolve of tens of millions of pro-life Americans who never gave up on the cause of life. Now, we're united in our gratitude and in our admiration for these devoted defenders of the unborn, and for the judges, justices, and especially President Trump, whose commitment to defending the law and the Constitution allowed this breakthrough after over 50 years of it not happening. Now, I stand here as the vice presidential nominee saying the Republican Party is proud to be the pro-life and the pro-family party. Now, we believe that human life is precious and every life is worthy of protection because we believe that every child, born and unborn, is created in the image of God. Now, following the Supreme Court's landmark decision, we recognize that the obligation to help nurture and protect the women and the babies all over this country has only just begun. And that's why we've been supporting policies and fighting for policies, Katie Britt has been at the forefront of it, that promote the creation of strong, thriving, and healthy families. We want to make it easier for families to have babies, not harder. We want to make it easier for young moms and dads to choose life, and we're going to do it every single day that we're in the government. Now, that includes supporting efforts to advance prenatal care, fertility treatments, maternal health, and paternal responsibility, because we know that very often the reason that some people don't choose life is because there are a lot of young men who aren't stepping up. And we want to change all of that. We want young families to choose life. We want young men to choose fatherhood. We want young people to choose family in this country. And we want to invest in women, especially pregnant mothers who need help welcoming a new child into the world. Sometimes it's scary. I know this, and it's especially scary when a pregnancy is unplanned, but we are going to support mothers and children. We're going to do new investments in counseling, in job training, and help with newborn expenses. We're going to do new investments in education and pregnancy care centers and so much more, because we believe that this country must be more welcoming to families. And we're committed to helping as many women as possible choose life and welcome new life into this world. Now, we're going to also protect women from sex traffickers, domestic abusers, and those who coerce women into abortion, because it does happen and it shouldn't happen in this country. We're too good of a country to let this happen in the United States of America. And we're going to shut down the flow of sex traffickers at the border that sexually assault young girls and put them into slavery. It is time to stop this madness, and it will when Donald J. Trump is President of the United States. Now, the Democrat Party's extremism on abortion, opposing even routine safety regulations, more closely resembles the policies of China, of North Korea, and of the Soviet Union more than it resembles any modern democracy. Now, before President Trump, America had the most extreme abortion laws in the world, allowing abortion up to the moment of birth for any reason at all, paid for by taxpayers, and very often with the federal government threatening Christian charities and hospitals that if they didn't do what the progressives wanted them to do, they would get shut down. Now, thanks to President Trump, we have turned the page, and our nation has a chance for a fresh start. And today, we all say together, unafraid, we are proud to be the pro-life party in the United States of America. We love babies, we love mothers, we love dads, and we want a nation where every person can have a happy, fulfilling life from the first moment of their existence until their dying day. And I believe that's a pro-life message the whole country can get behind. Now, we have to talk a little bit, not just about the life issue, but also about the religious freedom issue. Because as much as Kamala Harris talks a big game, she does that a lot, about uniting Americans and about respecting everybody, there has been no more radical leadership in this country when it comes to shutting down religious freedom, shutting down crisis pregnancy centers, and trying to force hospitals to do what the far left wants them to do. We believe that if you are a Christian organization, you ought to be able to live your conscience and live your faith in the United States of America, and we're going to fight for that every single step of the way. Now, I want to offer you just a couple of final thoughts here before I get on and get off the stage here and let you guys finish your evening. First of all, I want to tell you a little bit about something that happened to me, and Ralph, I apologize because you've heard me tell this story, but I think it drives home just how much faith can affect us even in the smallest ways. Now, the night before I gave the RNC welcome speech where I became your next vice president of the United States, I accepted the nomination of President Trump and the whole Republican Party. Like you can imagine, it was a little hard to go to sleep that night. And so it's Tuesday night, and I'm laying in bed, and Usha sleeps like a baby, so she's passed out next to me, and I just cannot get to sleep, and I'm laying there thinking to myself, this is the most important day of my life on Wednesday. I have got to be well slept, and I kind of got stressed out about being underslept for this big speech. And I just laid back, and I said, Lord Jesus, help me. And I'm not kidding that was the last thing that I remembered before I drifted off into one of the deepest sleeps that I've ever had in my entire life. And there are a lot of people, I'm sure a lot of media professionals here, a lot of folks who are watching who will roll their eyes and say, yeah, a lot of people say prayers and a lot of people drift off to sleep. It doesn't mean anything. But I want to call your attention to one of my favorite theologians, and that's Samuel L. Jackson in the movie Pulp Fiction. And he talks about, he had just dodged bullets, literally dodged bullets. And he talks about whether this was a miracle. He's debating with his friend whether this is a miracle. And he says something, I'm going to butcher it a little bit, but this is more or less what he says. He says, look, whether this is an according to Hoyle miracle is insignificant. Whether God finds your car keys, whether God does this or that, that's not what matters. But what does matter is that I felt the touch of God. And in that moment, as much as the world was swirling around me, I felt the touch of God. And I think there are so many ways, big and small, that we have an opportunity as people of faith to get out there and to remind people that while it sometimes seems distant, and while faith is not top of mind for so many people, the touch of God is everywhere in our country. We just have to look for it, we have to pray for it, and we have to make sure our fellow Americans see it. So I want to thank you for being a person of faith, for living your faith, and for getting out there. And let me just make one final observation here, which is, look, these are the first public remarks that I have made since my running mate was nearly assassinated for the second time yesterday. And President Trump, I was actually sitting at home in Cincinnati with my 7-year-old, and I get a phone call, and it says Donald J. Trump, so I answer it, and he says, JD, you're not going to believe this, but they tried to do it again. And I said, no, they didn't. You're joshing me. What's going on here, sir? And he says, no, I was playing golf, and the Secret Service found somebody who was trying to shoot me. And I say, oh, my Lord, sir, I'm so glad you're okay. I mean, are you doing okay? Are you not just physically okay, but everything's fine? He said, yeah, I'm doing fine. And this is just who Donald Trump is. He said, I'm a little mad because I was about to make a birdie putt on the 6th hole, and they wouldn't let me finish. And the guy's literally like, this happened, he calls me right after, this is 10 minutes after, and he's pissed off that they won't let him finish his birdie putt, right after they found a guy with an AK-47. But by the way, that is kind of the guy that you want to be president of the United States, right? Who's fazed by nothing, who's telling jokes afterwards. I think I was, without a question, bothered by it more than he was, and I was in Cincinnati, Ohio, 100 miles away from where this went down. But I do think that we should take this opportunity to call for a reduction in the ridiculous and inflammatory political rhetoric coming from too many corners of our politics. Look, we can disagree with one another, we can debate one another, but we cannot tell the American people that one candidate is a fascist, and if he's elected, it is going to be the end of American democracy. We cannot, as a person affiliated with Kamala Harris has said, that we need to, quote, eliminate Donald J. Trump. A New York Democratic congressman has said that in the past. If you tell the American people that this person is the end of democracy, if you tell the American people that this person needs to be eliminated, most of them, thank God, are going to ignore you, but some crazy person is going to take matters into their own hands and actually listen to the crazy rhetoric that you're putting out there. And I know it's popular on a lot of corners of the left to say that we have a both sides problem. And I'm not going to say we're always perfect. I'm not going to say that conservatives always get things exactly right. But you know the big difference between conservatives and liberals is that no one has tried to kill Kamala Harris in the last couple of months, and 2 people now have tried to kill Donald Trump in the last couple of months. I'd say that's pretty strong evidence that the left needs to tone down the rhetoric and needs to cut this crap out. Somebody's going to get hurt by it, and it's going to destroy this country. Somebody is going to get hurt, and you think about what an incredible wound it would open up in the United States of America. All of us, and I promise I will do my part to tone down the rhetoric, but in particular, the people telling you that Donald Trump needs to be eliminated, you guys need to cut it out or you're going to get somebody hurt. So with that, let me just ask you for one final thing. And that is, as Ralph said, you've gone through north of 2 million doors, and you've probably made north of 2 million phone calls. You're going to knock on 10 million doors, and you're going to make 10 million phone calls here in the next 2 months. I just want to give you every word of encouragement and every word of gratitude. I know that not every door you knock on, there's a friendly person on the other side. I know that not every phone call goes especially well, but you are the very best part of the American constitutional system. Because while the media can tell their lies about people of faith, and while the media can tell their lies about Donald Trump, getting out there and talking to people is the best antidote to the dishonesty that exists in this country. You are out there every day fighting for the truth, telling the truth, and I'm grateful for you. So let me just leave you with this thought, because I've seen something in the last 2 months. People always ask me, how are you doing? And the answer is, I'm doing great. I get to go around this country. I get to see it in a totally new light. I wish that I could take every single one of you and give you the perspective on this incredible country that I've gotten over just the last 2 months. In fact, it's a lot easier in some ways than running for Senate. When I was running for Senate, I rode around in the back of a used Subaru. Now I get to fly around in a plane, right? Not a bad upgrade. But every single day, I am reminded that we have the best country in the entire world. We've got the best workers. We've got the best people. We've got the best cultural and historical traditions in liberty and democracy anywhere in the world. We have the best natural resources. I mean, China and Russia would kill for some of the things that we have right here in our own country, and we have the most beautiful country in the entire world. So as you get out there, and as you knock on doors, and as you send people to win this race, remember that everything in America is going, everything in America, except for our leadership, is going great. So the task over the next 7 weeks is to give this great and beautiful country the leadership that it deserves. I'm going to fight every single day for it. Donald Trump is going to fight every single day for it. Do not despair. Get out there, fight for every single vote, and we're going to take this country back and give the American people the leadership that it deserves. Thank you all. God bless you for having me. God bless you for all of your efforts on our part. We couldn't do without you, and I'm so grateful to you. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, the next Vice President of these United States. Thank you, Senator JD Vance. Now, as you take your seats again, I don't think it's maybe as exciting as our last 2 speakers, but dinner is served. So as the wait staff makes their way back, please be patient. They're going to get to everybody as expeditiously as possible. We've got a live crowd. I ask that you keep your comments to a minimum, because there's a special group of people that I'm going to ask to stand up right now. And that is our volunteers, our paid canvassers, the volunteers that made this event happen. I know a lot of them are standing in the back. Please stand up at this time. Please stand up at this time. Right now, we have more than 120 paid canvassers, and we have more than 500 volunteers, some of whom couldn't be here tonight. Do you want to know why? Because they're knocking doors right now. And this is an important moment, but I wanted to recognize our door knockers. And just to give you a picture, my wife, Christiana, was managing 90 volunteers and staff for this one event tonight that are in this room. So thank you, Christiana. Thank you to our volunteers. And as our production team prepares the slides to recognize our donors, it was intentional that I recognized our team first, because you need to see the door hanger that Ralph held up, the volunteers and the staff that are working tirelessly to educate voters. Those are the things that you are supporting. So thank you for what you have already done tonight, and thank you for what you will do tonight. Now, tonight we are presented by our dear friends, longtime friends of Dr. Ralph Reed, Jim and Donna Stevenson. They are our presenting sponsors. Please thank Jim and Donna Stevenson for their support. And our premier sponsor tonight, we have Greater Georgia. Senator Loeffler, would you please rise? Jeff and Senator Loeffler, would y'all please rise? Now, before I tell you something about Greater Georgia, I got to tell you something. I've been in politics a long time, relatively, and I've come across a lot of candidates. I've come across a lot of individuals that have run for office, that have sought office, that have held office. And when they leave that office or lose that campaign, they are nowhere to be found. But Kelly Loeffler and Greater Georgia is fighting as hard today, or if not harder, for our values than when she was in the U.S. Senate. Thank you so much, Senator Loeffler, for staying in the fight. We appreciate you. Now, Greater Georgia is working to register, engage, and mobilize voters and communities across the Peach State. Their year-round work is focused on growing our movement by registering new voters, mobilizing diverse and unrepresented communities, promoting issue advocacy, and fighting to restore trust and integrity in our elections. Thank you so much, Senator Loeffler. We appreciate you. Our platinum sponsors, if we can go to our platinum sponsors on the screen. Those are our gold hosts. Those are wonderful too. We got our platinum hosts. First is Human Coalition. Julie, where are you at? Julie with Human Coalition, please stand up. Thank you so much for your support. Human Coalition is a wholly pro-life collective of individuals caring for women and families who are proud to work alongside them for life. We are proud to work alongside them for life, and we need to see their work expand. We're working with the legislature. I've been in dozens and dozens of meetings with Human Coalition, and the vital, life-saving work that they are doing is integral to Georgia now, and they have the potential to take it even to higher and higher levels, to do exactly what Senator Vance was talking about, to provide those life-saving care so that when somebody is facing a decision of choosing life or not, they have the resources they need to choose life. Thank you, Human Coalition. Thank you for your support. And you heard a little bit from our other platinum sponsor, Steve and Gail Tanner. He led our pledge. Longtime leaders in the business community, longtime friends of the family and supporters of our organization. Thank you so much for your support. We appreciate you, Steve and Gail.